this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. We are here today with a fellow group practice owner, and we are going to do a consulting call today. So Elise Gilbert Hall, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Thank you so much for being here. Likewise. So we are both meeting on a monthly basis at this point with a group of other group practice owners in the area, and it has been such a welcomed addition to my entrepreneurial life. And so we share a lot of times how grateful we all are for each other, and we hope that it continues to expand and that we can continue to help one another through all the trials and tribulations that come with this role. So yeah, I was very excited to have you on here. So introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us about your practice and the work that you do.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm Elise Gilbert Hall. I am the owner of Attunement Counseling and Wellness Collective. We have a physical location in Lincoln, Rhode Island that just opened up this month.
And woo, congratulations!
Thank you. Prior to that, we were exclusively telehealth, and still, I would say at least 90% of our practice is telehealth, just because that's what is convenient for people.
Sure.
But we're hoping that now that people have the option to come in person, that they'll take advantage of it if they want to.
That's great.
And so prior to opening this practice, I was in solo practice for 4 years. And most of my practice was working with people with anxiety disorders, OCD, or trauma. And I am a certified EMDR therapist and consultant in training. So EMDR is a huge part of my practice, both when I was a solo practitioner and as the group owner. Many of the clinicians at Attunement are EMDR trained. So we do a lot of that. And prior to even being in private practice at all, I, of course, had some agency jobs. Started out as an in-home therapist, an outpatient therapist in a community mental health agency. For a couple of years, went over to a public school where I was running an in-school therapeutic support program, and then moved over to a supervisor role at an agency. And I really loved being a supervisor. That was where I felt like I shined, and it was just very rewarding for me and fun for me and energizing. And so that was sort of the catalyst for opening up the group practice and the model that I developed and just in my roles in terms of running the group. I didn't want to only hire licensed people. I wanted to be able to offer supervision to pre-licensed people as well. And that's a little bit about me and my background.
Very cool. So you had a great foundation coming into this. So at what point did you know that it was time to start hiring? So you were doing the solo thing for 4 years. What was that turning point?
When I was in solo practice for the first 2 years, I was also working full time. So
Wow.
I didn't transition to full time solo practice until 2019 when my daughter was born.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it very lonely. It was a very um, tough adjustment for me,
Mm-hmm.
especially the fact that it happened at the same time I was adjusting to being a first time mother, like your whole identity is shifting anyway.
Right.
And then to also feel like you've lost basically all of your social interaction as
Yeah.
an adult at the same time, that was really tough. And so while there were many things I appreciated about being in solo practice during that season of early early motherhood days,
Mm-hmm.
I really found myself missing the supervision job that I had held
Yeah.
and just those connections that I built there, and being able to stay connected to therapists who are just interested in learning and developing their own identities and helping them forge their paths and identities as therapists. And so around that time that I was really feeling like I was missing that, of course, we're like smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. So everyone's
Right.
isolated and at home anyway. I'm like adjusting to doing telehealth, which I had never done before the pandemic. And Blue Cross announced that they would allow pre licensed therapists to begin billing under supervision.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, like this all seems to be kind of like lining up, and maybe the universe is starting to give me some messages here. And so I did some research. I got a lot of consultation with other practice owners,
Mm-hmm.
employment attorneys, accountants, everyone you need in your corner when you're developing a practice. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, I decided, okay, let's give it a try. Like, we'll start really small, see how it goes. And if it goes well, then we'll think about expanding. So I started
Mm-hmm.
off with two clinicians, and they were absolutely wonderful and still are wonderful. They're still with me. One of them I just promoted to a supervisor role because she got licensed. So, yeah, it's just been really exciting, and I'm learning as I go, which is part of, what I know we're here to talk about today. So,
Yeah. So give us a snapshot of where your practice is at now. How many clinicians?
so as of today, there are 8 full-time clinicians and
Mm-hmm.
one part-time clinician who's out on maternity leave.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really cool. It's been a lot of growth in a short amount of time. And I think, again, kind of going back to the rewarding aspects of supervision, seeing all these therapists that came to me pretty much straight out of grad school
Mm-hmm.
or right after getting their provisional license, starting to take their exams and pass and become independently licensed. I'm just like, it's like I'm experiencing it for myself. Like, that's
Yes.
how exciting it is for me as their supervisor to watch them take that leap and
Mm-hmm.
accomplish something that they weren't sure they could do. And yeah, it's just really, it's awesome.
I can relate so much to your journey and what a rewarding situation, and for you to kind of see it through, and you really knew early on that your goal was to be able to provide quality supervision and see the process through for these clinicians. So yeah, that's a lot of growth in a short amount of time, for
It
sure.
is.
So what is your question for today?
So, my question is, how do I scale my practice to the point where, we're achieving a pretty significant amount of growth while maintaining those really personal connections that I have to each individual employee?
Mm-hmm.
I think one fear that I have is I don't ever want people to think about my practice as like a therapy factory where it's like, I'm just like this entity that's kind of like there, but not really connected, who's just like taking a cut of whatever's brought into the practice and, not
Mhm.
contributing in any kind of way to the culture. Like it's really important to me to
Yeah.
maintain a culture of a small practice, even if we scale and bring on more people.
Again, so relatable and an attitude that I appreciate very much. So, what is your vision at this point in terms of growth? Do you see yourself continuing to hire? Do you have an idea of how that's going to go yet at this point?
So, the pace that I had set for myself was onboarding one clinician every 3 months.
Okay.
And I've pretty much stuck with that. So I'm trying to think exactly how many months the practice has been open.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 28 months.
Mm-hmm.
So technically at this point, yes, I would like to bring on another clinician. And I'm in the process of trying to develop some better systems for
Sure.
myself and for the practice. And so I'm trying to be mindful of my own limitations there and wanting to
Sure.
get some better systems in place before growing more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that said, longer term, I would like to have possibly 10 to 15 clinicians on
Mm-hmm.
staff. I
Okay.
think if I got bigger than that, I I just feel like it would be a culture shift if we
Sure.
were to grow beyond that.
Yeah, and
Um,
that is usually the number that people say that shift happens. So you're right on par there. So what is the current organizational breakdown? So you mentioned that you recently promoted someone to a supervisory role that got licensed. So is it just you and that other person providing supervision right now?
yes. So up until Monday, November 6th, which is when she takes over, I was supervising everybody in the practice, which was
Mm-hmm.
really limiting growth. Like even the 10 clinicians on staff that I had up until this week, I felt so overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how to fit in those supervision hours with
Yeah.
everything else on my plate, both in my personal life and just
Mm-hmm.
like running the practice. Um, so it was really important to me to get somebody into a supervisory role. I've really had a hard time getting somebody into that role
Yeah.
externally for various reasons. And then I thought, okay, if I can just hold out and promote internally, it could be better just all around.
Yeah.
And so she is going to be supervising the social workers in the practice,
Mm-hmm.
which will leave me with, I believe, only two supervisees of my own who are
Wow.
not
So
social
that is
workers.
going to be a big shift, and it hasn't necessarily been underway yet. So you will definitely feel some weight lifted, I'm assuming, at that point. And so you will still provide supervision to her, like supervisor to the supervisor?
Yes, not
Mm-hmm.
probably not on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know her schedule is pretty packed, so I'm trying
Sure.
to be mindful of not committing her to a lot of additional meetings outside of
Yeah.
what's already on her schedule. But I do want to have some kind of like scheduled meetings and check ins with her,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's once a month, and
Sure.
then those two supervision sessions. And I'm also taking on two clients. I haven't seen clients in over a year now.
Wow.
And I'm actually like really excited about it. I never thought I'd get to
I
that
think it's the
point
right
where I
move.
was like chomping at the bit for clients, but I'm really
Yeah.
excited. I have 2 EMDR clients I'm starting with next week.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so you're already headed in the right direction. So I'm assuming that this question is really coming from, even though it's been a lot, you really enjoy supervision. I have had the opportunity to meet your team. You seem like a very cohesive group. And so maybe there's some concern that when you're not having those weekly touch points with everyone, is there still going to be that connection and cohesion? And how do you maintain your relationship with each of them and maintain that bigger culture that you were speaking of, where you never want to get to a point where you feel so far removed and disconnected?
Yeah, I just think in terms of like promoting a positive and cohesive culture within the practice,
Right.
I have to be like in touch with them
Yes.
every week, like at a minimum of once a
Mm-hmm.
week. And obviously doing that like individually 1 hour every week with each person was a lot,
Sure.
and I wouldn't be able to realistically do that if we were
Right.
to grow to 10 to 15 clinicians.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I am also hoping to take a little bit of a step back because I feel like I've been the one for
Right.
everything for the past almost 2.5 years. And I'm really trying to like get the practice to a point where it can run for the most part without me with the right
Mm-hmm.
systems in place, and I can step in when absolutely needed.
Right. Okay. Well, the first thing that I will start with is your intentions are great, and you have already laid the foundation. So you were involved in the hiring. You have been the supervisor. You've been the point person. And so those relationships are already there. And it sounds like you will still actively be involved in hiring and onboarding, correct? Moving forward to get to that 10 to 15?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's huge, right? Because you're the face of the business. You're the one that they are interacting with at the beginning and even through those first few months of getting acclimated. So I think that is already going to set you up for success because you will start off with that kind of relationship built like you did with the rest of your team. One of the things that I've done in our practice, so we have 20 clinicians now. We have 3 clinicians that provide either supervision or serve as a point person. So the majority of our clinicians, fortunately, are independently licensed, but we still want everyone assigned to someone that has been with the practice longer and that shares their license and works with a similar population so that if they have any clinical issues that arise, they know the go-to person. And so I, similar to you, wanted to make sure that there were those touch points and that I maintained relationships with everyone on the team. And so I meet with everyone at a minimum once a month. And my thought is this is going to potentially free you up because that's maybe 10 hours of supervision per week. And now having someone else take the majority of that, you'll obviously have other things, I'm sure, to do. But the once a month touch point, so we reserve an hour. We don't necessarily always use that 1 hour. And we utilize that time to discuss if there are case related issues that really supersede that supervision, where it really is something that I, as the practice owner, should be weighing in on. We will touch base on that. But it's really to check in about them as a person. How's their work-life balance? How are they managing stress? Are they getting the level of support that they feel that they need? Do they have any suggestions on things that we can do to improve? What's working well? And I get incredible feedback from the team. And they all do seem to prioritize those meetings. They come prepared. They have great feedback. And so that is one thing that I would suggest. You could also have the option for like an office hours style where, you now have this in-person location, which I think in and of itself may help if some of the clinicians transition to time in the office, where if you happen to be there certain days, certain times, but you can also have designated day and time that you're available if people need to check in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one suggestion. So tell me about your level of contact as a team. Do you get together outside of work? Do you have regular meetings as a team? What does all that look like?
Yeah, so I try up until this year actually, I
Mm-hmm.
try to do two events a year.
Okay.
Like something around the holidays where we get
Sure.
together and just do something fun.
Mm-hmm.
We'll either go out to dinner or last year we did like a virtual escape room since we're all
Oh,
kind of scattered around.
that's
And it
awesome.
was so fun. It was
Mm-hmm.
hilarious. My team did awful. The other team escaped the room like immediately, and we took the full hour and didn't escape. It was just like so embarrassing. So, anyway, it was like those types of things are super fun. And then in the
Yeah.
summer, I try to do a staff appreciation event that's
Nice.
kind of similar, just like something fun. It's around the
Mm-hmm.
anniversary of when the practice opened. Um,
Yes.
this past year, we went out for a nice dinner and we made mandalas, and
Mm-hmm.
that was really cool. Everyone really liked that. Um, we just did this past week to celebrate the new office opening a charcuterie board workshop
Oh.
where someone came in and taught us all how to make like a fancy charcuterie board, and
Mm-hmm.
um, that was really fun. So, actually, some of the feedback I had gotten from a clinician at her annual review was that she really appreciated those events
Mm-hmm.
and recommended that maybe we do it more than twice a year. So maybe like quarterly, and it doesn't have to be
Yes.
something huge and expensive. It could be like, let's
Exactly.
meet for a picnic somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
or do a potluck or something. And so I'm trying to now focus on that, like having something quarterly. And of course, not everyone can make every single thing, but
Right.
if, at least half of us can make it, it's so nice. And
Oh,
it
absolutely.
really, it makes a huge difference because, like I said, most of us are working remotely and we don't have the option to like chat in the hallway or pop into the office next door and
Mm-hmm.
ask a question. So everything is through a screen or like through our phones or something. And so to actually sit in the room and laugh and talk about stupid TV shows and what we're doing this weekend, or like laugh about something stupid our spouse said or something. Um,
Mm-hmm.
those things make a huge difference in
Yes.
our feeling of being connected to each other and to the practice.
Absolutely. If that's the feedback that you got, the 2 times a year have been well attended. People seem to really enjoy it. It has served that purpose of bringing you all together. My mentality is very similar, where yes, we're clinicians, but we're people. And I think there are ways to maintain professionalism, but also to get to know one another on a different level. And it really does create and maintain a lot of what you were saying at the outset you wanted to ensure that you were doing. And so quarterly is very reasonable. We as a practice do that. And actually, one of the clinicians in the practice has really taken the lead. So it doesn't necessarily need to be something that you take on your shoulders. And there are some people that really enjoy planning events, and we will administer surveys with ideas, dates that work well for people. We've done an actual escape room. We did a paint night. We've done gatherings in the fall that are potluck. And if we do some type of event, what I've done is, because it can get costly, and you don't want it to be cost prohibitive. And so what we've done is, if we do an event where everybody comes and they bring their own food, that's one thing. The holiday party obviously is something that the practice provides. But then if we're doing some type of an activity, then the clinicians will pay for their ticket. But what I do is I keep kind of a raffle. So every month I pull a report on our electronic health record and make sure that all notes are completed and signed. And if people are administering outcome measures, if they get a positive survey from a client, if we get good feedback from somebody on the team, then they get entered. And so every month I'll pull a name, and that one person is free for whatever event it is if they choose to participate, or they'll get a gift card or some sort of incentive. So that's one way where it's by choice. People come if they want to, but a way to increase being able to do something like that but have it be a little bit more cost effective. So I definitely think you're on the right track there. Another thing that was incredibly helpful, as we know, everybody communicates differently. And some people, even if they're given the opportunity, just like with a client, how do you feel the treatment is going? And are you feeling like you're progressing and that we're the right fit? They may never tell you if the feedback is not great. And the same thing with clinicians. So even if you're meeting with them for their review, you're doing these monthly checkpoints, some people are just not going to feel comfortable. And so we did a clinician engagement survey. So I had created it on Google Forms. I gave them the option to leave it anonymous or they could put their name. And it was all questions related to every aspect of the practice. So our team meetings, we do peer consultation, they do one-on-one supervision. Do they find it effective? What are things that we can do to improve? Do they attend the gatherings and do they enjoy that? What are some trainings that we can provide? What are their professional development goals? But then in addition, it was rate your level of stress in a typical week. What is the main source of stress? And how would you rate your work-life balance? And what can we do to help manage that? And then obviously feedback on things that we can improve on, why they came to the practice in the first place, and things that we can do better. And so I got such incredible feedback and such helpful feedback because some people are more inclined to put it in writing. And I was fortunate that everyone in the practice included their name, and that enabled us to continue the conversation and put things into practice. And so that's another thing that does not take a lot of time to create. And I think that going through that effort really does pay off in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that's
no, I agree. And I think those are the important things that I can shift my attention to now that I'm freed up from that supervision time. And just talking to you, my wheels are turning. Like, okay, assigning someone a mentor, like at onboarding and those monthly check-ins, the surveys, maybe like tapping someone else in the practice to be sort of like helpful in culture development and maintenance. And I can think of exactly who would be good for that as I'm saying that.
I love that.
Like, even just like talking these things through, I'm getting a lot of really great ideas.
Oh, well, you clearly already have a great foundation. You had a clear vision in your mind. You've done it. It's really just about maintaining it. And you've already been doing a lot of things. I mean, everybody knows you. You're a presence. You're available. And so there are ways to still do that. And I also think transparency and communication is huge. So as you grow, you're obviously going to be making a lot of business decisions. You're going to be scaling. You had talked about maybe shifting some of the processes, and there's going to be protocols that you're going to need to change, and policies that you're going to update. And I think it's really helpful to keep your team, and I know that you do this, as in the loop as possible. And you and I are very similar in how we operate, where there's a lot of transparency. And so I think that's also really going to set you up for success, because even though you might be a little bit more on the periphery, they know that you are really striving to just make the practice better, and that you have been really open about your vision for growth, and that you want to do it strategically. You want it to be gradual. You want to make sure that you're bringing the right people on. Another thing that I would say too in the hiring process is it starts with me, and I screen everyone and have that initial contact. But then I bring our clinical team lead in for the second interview. And so they get the opportunity to meet her, hear about her experience at the practice. So it's not just me raving about this culture and the work that we do. They're hearing it straight from someone who, she's the type of person that is so honest and would say these things whether I was there or not. And so then vice versa, I also get her feedback, because she is going to pick up on different things than I am. And we do have very different personalities. And so I really value her perspective. And then we have offered recently this kind of third level, because we are such a large practice and we're not necessarily in need of hiring anyone. Our offices are filled for the most part. But if somebody is referred, or if they've heard about us and want to come, we'll definitely still entertain the idea. And so we've done a panel. And so they will log into one of our team meetings and they'll introduce themselves, and then they get to ask multiple clinicians. And it's a very welcoming group. I know it probably sounds intimidating,
Mhm.
but that's another great way to let your team know that you value their perspective. You've created something really incredible. You want to maintain it. And we have actually had people that I may have hired if it were just me or if it were just the clinical team lead and I. And because of the clinician feedback, we did not bring them on board. And I just think that speaks volumes about how much I value them. So it's another thought with the hiring process.
And so important too for employee retention. Like
Yes.
if your team feels really strongly that they have a great support network
Mm-hmm.
and there are certain things that might make them feel uncomfortable or not valued or
Mm-hmm.
shift the culture in a way that doesn't feel right and they have the power to make a choice around that, like, yeah,
Yes.
that's huge.
Yes. And I think the key thing is that you keep those lines of communication open and that they have that spot on the schedule with you. And that obviously, if something comes up in the interim, they can still reach out, but they have someone for the clinical stuff and to really designate that you're the go to for everything else.
Right. Yeah. I
So
mean, the
I
the other thing
really,
that the other thing that comes to mind too, like
yeah,
as you were telling me about that is um in terms of like a culture of transparency and
yeah.
trust and open communication, I think sometimes what happens in
Mm-hmm.
groups is employees kind of have a narrative about the practice owner and like their
Sure.
motivations and the amount of money they might be making.
Right.
And I'm completely honest with everybody. Yes, like this is a financially rewarding situation for me. I would
Mm-hmm.
not be pouring my heart and soul into this if I wasn't making money because I'm not independently wealthy. And that
Right.
said, I also really value my employees and try to create a situation that's humanizing and respectful and
Mm-hmm.
validating of them and their skills and their wants and needs. And so
Absolutely.
by saying and demonstrating, I'm not just going to hire anyone with a pulse because I want more
Right.
money. Like, I actually, like, you're my team
Yeah,
and you're impacted by who comes in and who goes out.
for
So,
sure.
like, bringing them into that and making them
Yeah.
a part of that is such a great way to scale while also doing it in a way that's really like mindful of the people who are
Yeah.
already on board and who you want to retain.
Oh, well, it seems like a lot of this resonated. You already had a lot of this on your mind. Like you said, it got some of the gears turning. So I really appreciate the conversation because these are things that are on my mind and that I've been actively doing over the last year. I would say it's really been a focal point for me. So it's always been really helpful for me to connect with people that are kind of in the same stage of practice, that might be a few months ahead. And so I'm really excited that you have experienced the growth that you have, that you've created the culture that you have, that you're scaling, you've identified this person that you could promote, which is so incredible. And to see what this does for you in your role to just continue to enhance the practice. So I'm grateful that I'm still going to have the opportunity to check in with you when we meet. But I appreciate your question and all that you have done, and to know that this group is right down the way doing incredible work and specializing in EMDR. There is such a need. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. And it's always very helpful chatting with you about anything pertaining to this work.
Likewise, I appreciate your support and collegiality more than you know. So fill everyone in on how they can find you all if anyone is their interest is piqued and they have any interest in potentially joining your team, or if they're looking for an EMDR therapist or some additional support and they're in your area.
Yeah, so I'm always open to interviewing anybody who has an interest, even if I don't have a job posted.
Sure.
So you can access our employment questionnaire via our website, which is www.attunementcollective.com. There's a little employment tab, and it kind of goes over who we are, our values, our mission, all of the benefits, and kind of what you get when you join our group.
Sure.
And so, again, even if we don't have a job posted, anybody can submit that questionnaire. I'll review it and reach out, and always open to chatting. In terms of clients who are maybe looking for EMDR or another type of therapy, same thing, our website, www.attunementcollective.com, or email our intake coordinator at hello@attunementcollective.com, and just fill her in on what you're looking for, and she'll make a recommendation on who she thinks would be a good match. But we do have openings. We accept Blue Cross and Aetna insurances. Our clinicians are licensed in Mass and Rhode Island. Some are licensed in Connecticut and Vermont as well. And yeah, we have a pretty big variety of expertise and areas of practice. So even though EMDR is the focus for a lot of us in terms of the issues that we treat and the other types of training or therapy we provide, there's a lot of information on our website about that. And so, yeah, we always encourage people to reach out. And if we don't have an opening, then we have a wait list that we are constantly checking in on and trying to move through. So we try to get people connected pretty quickly.
Awesome. I will make sure to include the website in the show notes and the email so that people don't even have to think about it. It's right there. So good luck on this next leg of your journey. I am definitely going to stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julia. This was great.
Absolutely. If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.